Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Ross, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here. Mr. Berman, you spoke in your opening statements about the use of funds to be funneled as they have been for such things as building Iranian regime contacts. For example, I think you said that they put $6 billion annually into Bashar Assad's coffers, and that we are continuing to fund, or they're continuing to fund Hezbollah, continuing to fund Hamas, the Houthis. We had some witnesses testify before this task force some time ago that essentially stated that Iran was the central bank of terrorism. And so what we are now about ready to do, if this deal is effectuated, is to allow for an increase anywhere from $100 to $100 billion of frozen assets, accounts, and then to channel this money through the same infrastructure that's been there to fund state terrorism. Now, it seems to me that we have allowed, or at least the premise of this negotiation has been, let us not have an Iranian nuclear weapon capability, but let us do so at the expense of expanding international and global terrorism. And to that end, I ask, what are we to expect? Are we to expect that now those missiles that were funneled down into Gaza are going to be more sophisticated? What are we going to expect with regard to the missile defense system that now will be sold from Russia to Iran? Are we here just basically saying that we have licensed the management of nuclear capabilities in Iran totally at the expense of expanding terrorism throughout this world?
Well, sir, I think you hit upon what I believe is a crucial point, which is that when we begin to looking at this agreement, one of the, I believe, most sober ways to approach it would be to look at the consequences and whether or not the United States has the political, economic, and strategic tools to manage the consequences that are likely to flow from it. Obviously, increased funds allocated to terrorist proxies of the Islamic Republic is a tremendous concern.
And it's going to happen, as a matter of fact. I mean, let's just look at history. It's happened. And now let's look at history with our relationship with Iran. Okay, the only thing that we have to rely on to make sure that this deal is effectuated as it is written, quite frankly, is the trust of Iran. And so let's look at the history with Iran. Let's see. Since 1979, on every November 4th, they proclaimed Death to America Day. Just recently, within the last year, they've put a mock battleship out in the Persian Gulf and had that attacked and sank in the name of destroying the United States. So essentially, we've negotiated a deal that says that we're going to have to trust Iran, and yet we're going to have to trust them through a third party. So have we managed our consequences to this point? And if not, what in history has given us any indication that this was a deal that we should have negotiated?
I don't believe we have, and in my opening remarks I made the point that although the premise that the White House has put forward for the deal is transactional in nature, that this is limited, it's limited to the Iranian nuclear program, the way we've gone about negotiating this and the things that we've put on the table, including massive sanctions relief, as a result.
And the sanctions have worked. The sanctions have worked.
They have, but the ability to rehabilitate the Iranian economy and provide additional aid to terrorist proxies of the Islamic Republic is a function of the fact that we are looking at this deal privately, aspirationally, the idea that Iran will turn over a new ideological leaf as a result of these negotiations.
And if there is a violation by Iran, the realistic expectation of snapback sanctions is not realistic at all, is it?
I think there are many technical reasons to be very skeptical of snapback, but maybe the most important is the fact that, as former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger has written about in several books, as you become deeply enmeshed in negotiations, such as the ones that we're engaged in today, you become a vested stakeholder. And bad consequences are actually...
You do it for the sake of having a deal, not for the sake of the substance of the deal that would have benefited you had you stayed to your principles at the outset. Mr. Peros, one real quickly. What did the administration use to determine what were considered sanctions for nuclear violations and terrorist violations? If you have, I've just run out of time, I think.
Simple answer to your question, I remain totally befuddled. I have no idea.
I agree with you. Thank you. I yield back.